Here we're going to make a dorsal blocking splint or orthosis. First, you're going to have the patient place their hand and arm on a piece of parchment paper or two papers connected to each other. And you're going to draw out the hand to about 2/3 length of the forearm here. So that's about 2/3 length. And then we're going to mark some key points right here, the CMC of the thumb. And we're going to mark the palmar creases. So make sure to get the palmar crease towards the index finger side, because we're going to connect those lines from the CMC to the palmar crease right here, since the thumb is not going to be a part of the splint. So we're going to round it out there. And for the fingers, you want to keep about an inch of extra room past the fingertips. So you want to add about an inch of space around the fingertips, as I'm doing here. And then for the forearm, you want to make sure you lengthen it out, because it's going to wrap about 2/3 the circumferential forearm. So it's going to wrap around the forearm about 2/3 the length. Then it's very important to cut out the template, and you're going to place it back onto the patient and check the fit. So we want to position the arm about 20 degrees of flexion, wrist flexion, and about 70 degrees of finger flexion. So have that position, and then I'm going, as you can see, I'm placing the template on, and I'm making sure that it fits all the important parts. I make sure that it covers the fingertips fully, and I make sure that, as you can see here, covers the fingertips, and I make sure that it wraps around the forearm about halfway to 2/3, which it also does there. Once you're done checking the fit, you're going to trace it out on the splinting material, as I'm doing here. And you can add extra spaces because you want to cut inside the lines so the splint looks pretty. Then you're going to put it into the hot water so it's a bit softer to cut. And as you can see it here, I am cutting out the design, and I'm cutting inside the lines so the splint does look pretty, because we don't want the lines to be on the splint. So as you can see, I'm cutting it out here, trying to use kind of bigger snips of the scissors. And here we have the design now, ready to place it back into the water. Actually, before I place it in, I'm going to round out the corners, as I'm doing here, rounding it out, and then I'm going to place it back into the water to mold it onto the patient. So make sure the corners are nice and rounded, so there's no pointy ends of the splint. Once you put it back into the water, make sure it's not too hot before putting it onto the patient. Now, as you place the splint over, let gravity do its job. So you just want to just gently rub over the ends and make sure it conforms nicely to the body. But again, let gravity kind of conform it. You just guide it along the arm and the knuckles, um, and make sure there's no pointy ends, kind of any areas of space, kind of like the air bubbles. So make sure you're constantly rubbing on all sides to make sure it's nice and smooth as the splint gets to hold. Make sure their position is correct, so a wrist a little bent about 20 degrees and the fingers bent about 70 degrees. So constantly check that they're staying in that position and they're not moving around. You can either have them rest their elbow like this, which I found it more comfortable, or you can have them rested on the arm trough as you mold it on, but I found it more comfortable with this position. So here we are now going to make the adjustments. I'm going to cut off a little bit from the pinky side because there's too much material, and a little bit off the index finger side. So you want the splint to wrap around the pinky and the index finger by a little bit, like you want to cover it. You want to cover over the finger and maybe like a centimeter above the finger, but this is too much material. That's why I'm cutting off the ends here, so it's a bit better of a fit. So there's not too much material sticking out. And then make sure when you do make these adjustments, there's going to be more rugged edges. So after you make these adjustments, make sure you go back and you place it back into the hot water to smooth out the edges so it's not sharp. And make sure you take your time, don't rush. This part is kind of the trickiest part because it's kind of hard to find the right angles to snip the ends off. So definitely try to find the right angles and try not to take too many snips, because the more snips you take, the more rugged edges there will be. So try to make it very efficient with your snips of the scissors. And then here I'm replacing it on and I'm checking again. So you can see it's a much better fit now. It's covering the index and pinky. It's like going a little bit above the pinky and index now, maybe like a centimeter. So this is more of a perfect fit now of the splint. One of the most important part here, to place it back into the water, just the edges, and make sure to rub out and smooth out the edges on all the sides. Look out for any rugged edges, or look out for any parts of the holes, like the perforated holes. Make sure to round that out really smoothly so there's no rugged edges of the splint. For the Velcro strips, we're going to have 4 strips on each side. So we're going to have one on the proximal end, one on the middle end. So one proximal, one around the middle. We're going to have one that goes around the palm and one that goes around the fingers. So I'm making the marks here. So there's going to be 2 down there and 2 up there. So once again, one that's going to go proximal end there, one around the middle, one around the palm right there, and one that's going to go across the fingers. Now I'm putting the Velcro strips on. As you can see, one here on the proximal end, one here on the middle end. This is going to go around the forearm. I'm placing on the other side here now, more on the proximal end. That's going to go around the forearms. And then I'm going to put the next one, a smaller strip, that this is going to go around the palm of the hand, more around the palm. And then that one is going to go around the fingers. This one you can make a bigger strip. You want the one that goes around the fingers to be bigger. I made this one small, but you want it to be a bigger strip because you want the Velcro strap to be longer. Here I'm measuring out how much Velcro straps we need, the length of it. As you can see, I'm measuring it out before cutting it out. And then really important, I round out the edges. So I'm rounding it out here. And I remember I said for the palm you wanted a thinner strap, but for the fingers you want a thicker one. So I'm rounding out all the straps here before placing it on. Here we have the final product. Now we're placing the Velcro straps on. So here's the proximal end, and then I'm going to put the middle end. And for the palm one, it's going to be a thinner strap. But for the last strap, the fingers one, you want a regular size one, the regular thick kind, so it holds all the fingers in extension. I just made a mistake and made it another thin one, so make sure the last strap is also thick, just like the proximal ends. And here we have the finished product. As you can see here, make sure you check for any sharp edges or pressure points, and warn the patient about the wear schedule, and make sure they are educated on that.